I think I may have mentioned in an earlier time about a young man who was colorblind, and he received a pair of glasses that compensated and allowed him to see colors that before he had never been able to perceive. And it was like a whole different world existed that he never knew, even though he was looking at the same thing that everybody else was. And I think that describes, in a certain way, our situation in these days, when there are so many who would either just simply not believe or deny that there is another level to our understanding of reality that exists. And some would say, well, if I can't perceive it with my senses, it's not there. This, you are all just kind of this fantasy guy in the sky who's doing all these things, And St. John of the Cross, during the season of Advent, gives us a beautiful opportunity about how we as Christians can respond in a situation like that. In the season of Advent, what would you say is the primary symbol of Advent? Not everybody wants. A wreath, but more specifically, the candle. But I heard it over there. Light.
Yeah.
We light the candles to show the advance of Advent as we approach the birth of light. And so we focus a lot on the coming of light into the world. That's what we believe about Jesus' birth. But there's kind of a flip side to it, in that Advent is also a way that we can enter into darkness in a way that, and I'm not talking about a moral darkness such as the absence of goodness, and I'm not talking about an intellectual darkness which is ignorance. I'm talking about entering into a place where we're not distracted by lights. You ever go into the shopping malls and all that stuff, and they've got lights everywhere. They're trying to draw you in. And who has heard that Kmart has returned to the blue light special? They're bringing it back. Again, trying to draw you out. If you've ever been to Vegas, you can see it from miles away at night because there's so much light. But is that really a light that guides? In St. John of the Cross, his whole being was about entering into that relationship with God, not by following lights, but by entering into darkness, by taking away all those little things that distract us. This is so interesting. We hear in that first reading here how Balaam was saying, I see what God sees, and I hear what God says, and I know what God knows. And John of the Cross would say, I know this, I know nothing. And so it's a different way of encountering God. And one of the exercises that I've done, been doing, is the one where you take the phrase from the Psalm, be still and know that I am God. You ever prayed that and then just start taking a word away at the end? Be still and know that I am. Be still and know, and you just kind of continue until you get to be. And it's a contemplative way of entering more deeply and kind of taking away all those things that might distract and just getting into the sense of being. Because the greatest argument that many folks have against a faith life or a life of understanding sort of a metaphysical realm is that they don't see the action. You can't study it. You can't see it. You can't perceive it. We can't measure it. And sometimes we respond, well, God is active and God does this. And John of the Cross's response is, it's not about doing, it's about being. And when we engage in that perspective, we recognize we hit at a deeper value of the human person. That we understand that we are, that we exist, we be, ungrammatically. But we have an awareness of our existence, and that's a gift from God. And it's an awareness that allows us to be aware of God's presence. We get so distracted by things that sometimes we're not able to do it. And so John of the Cross in Advent is saying, don't only fix on the lights of those candles, but think about the darkness that surrounds us during this time. That it too can be a blessing as we move into a deeper relationship with God, that we allow the things that might put God in a box, we let those things go. And I have a quote from St. John of the Cross that could help us. Since God is inaccessible, be careful not to concern yourself with all that your faculties can comprehend and your sense feel, so that you do not become satisfied with less and lose the lightness of soul suitable for going to Him. Sometimes we will cling on to lesser lights because that's what we can perceive, and we lose the greater light that is God. You ever stare at the sun and you almost get into darkness in just a couple of seconds because the light is so bright it actually keeps your eyes from seeing anything? That's more akin to what God is like. It's this light that is so all-encompassing it blinds out everything else. And so, my brothers and sisters, as we enter more deeply into Advent and our sense of preparation and expectation, anticipating Jesus' coming, let's not be distracted by lesser lights, but instead to renew ourselves in being with God, to not be afraid to enter into darkness, to experience God's presence and His love, and to let go of things that might be holding us back from really experiencing God as God is. Be still and know that I am God. Be